¿cómo están? Buenos días. Gracias a todos por estar aquí, especialmente a Eduardo por hacer esto posible, que hizo el vínculo con Leslee Udwin. Yo soy Juan Carlos Díaz Bilbao y llevo la línea de ecosistema impacto social, que es crear condiciones que desarrollen y fortalezcan los proyectos de impacto social, tanto en lo individual como en lo colectivo. Y desde hace 2 años en Promotora Social México hemos tomado a la primera infancia, al desarrollo infantil temprano como una gran causa en la cual queremos incidir y que nos emociona tener a tantos amigos y aliados aquí sentados, un grupo tan diverso y tan plural para detonar una conversación. Vamos a tener el privilegio de tener a Leslee Udwin, que a mí me emociona, y voy a leer brevemente un par de momentos destacados en su carrera, pero la idea es que con todo este conocimiento, experiencia, ideas que tenemos acá, se propicia una conversación a partir de esa presentación. Así que sientan un espacio distensado, un formato interactivo y dinámico en donde los anime a participar. Y bueno, Leslee Udwin, de Think Equal, en marzo de 2019 recibió el premio Activista de ONU Mujeres por la Paz en las Naciones Unidas. Fue votada por el New York Times como la segunda mujer más impactante de 2015 después de Hillary Clinton. Y recibió el prestigioso premio sueco de Derechos Humanos Anna Lindh, anteriormente ganado por Madeleine Albright. También ha sido nombrada héroe global de SAFE en 2015, pensadora global por política exterior, y ya recibió el premio Global Mind ED de Arte y Educación en 2019. La Asociación de las Naciones Unidas ha honrado a Leslee como ciudadana global en 2019. Por favor, recibamos a Leslee Udwin con un gran aplauso. Leslee, the floor is yours.
Muchísimas gracias. Estoy muy feliz estar aquí en México otra vez. Es, I think, my 6th time. What I realized this morning as I greeted, what's your name again? Federico and his lovely wife, Lorenza, is that there is a real culture issue between the UK and Mexico. I didn't realize it till this morning. Every time I greet a Mexican and I go, because you are so warm, you are so amazing as a people. And I really love that about you all. Big open hearts, which is going to serve us very well with bringing this critical intervention, this prevention program, to all of our children in this country, which I am determined we shall do and am already making immense progress with. So, su casa es mi casa. Que chido están. I think you're amazing. So, let's begin by my telling you how I've landed up here, because actually I'm an interloper. I came from a very different world. Until 3.5 years ago, I was a filmmaker, and a very happy filmmaker and a very successful filmmaker. And suddenly, this extraordinarily brutal case about a gang rape in India hit our television screens. You remember December 2012? That young girl gang raped on a moving bus in Delhi until her intestines were hanging out of her body. And she was thrown like a piece of basura onto the side of the highway. And what took me to India to make what was actually my first documentary, because I had always made feature films for the cinema. But I went to India to make this film, not because of the bleakness of that gang rape, because we know this happens day in, day out, second in, second out, all over the world, and it's not confined to India. But what took me there was an extraordinary protest which erupted out on the streets, men and women of India. And to be honest with you, I thought, naively I now know, but at the time I really thought this is the beginning of the end of violence against women, because there were millions of people on the streets. The men joined in, and everyone, day after day, for more than 1 month. This wasn't just a protest like we had for Charlie Hebdo in Paris, 2 million people out on the streets. Amazing. 1 day they gave. These people went on and on and on, and I thought, if I have a responsibility as a filmmaker, I have to go and amplify their voices, and that's all I thought I was doing. Making a campaigning film. Well, when I got there, I became absolutely obsessed with this thought. If we don't understand the men who do this, how in God's name are we ever going to change them? So what is the point, I thought, of my making this film, which took me 2.5 years, and I know as a filmmaker, a film takes long, big chunk of your life. What's the point in doing it unless I can sit with those men and find out from them why and how they can do it? So determined as I was, I persuaded the Director General of Tihar Jail. This is the first time cameras have ever gone into a jail in India. And I sat for 31 hours over a number of weeks with 7 rapists. If I tell you that this was for me the biggest reversal of expectation as a journey that I've ever been on in my life, everything I thought would be one way was the opposite or another. First of all, I thought that I would be furious because I'm one of the statistics. I'm that 1 in 5 women in the world who is raped. And I was raped at 18 in South Africa. And I thought, because I didn't report, I'm ashamed to tell you, in my day, you would just bury it. And I remember thinking they'll blame me for it. They'll say it was my fault. Just don't. You know, I thought the guy was going to kill me. He was quite violent. And then I thought, I'm alive. He didn't kill me. I was only raped, I thought, in my 18-year-old head. Bury it, forget it. And I told no one. And then I got frightened that when I sat in front of these rapists, everything would come swelling up in me, and I might physically assault one of them, even though I'm a very peaceful person. So that was my fear, and I asked the Director General, allow me to practice on other rapists who I don't need for my film, so that if I hit them, I don't ruin my film. Crazy thinking, but that's how producers and directors think. Okay, I practiced on 4 rapists, one of whom had raped a 5-year-old girl. And I sat with him for 3 hours. Now, let's just get to the insights. The insights are, 1, I didn't even feel anger sitting with these men. I thought I'd hit them. I didn't even feel angry because it wasn't appropriate to feel anger, because it was so obvious that they almost had no agency in this. And I'll explain what I mean in a moment. I expected that at least one of them would feel remorse or regret. You know, as a filmmaker, you think, one will cry and we'll have a... Not one of these men expressed any regret for what they had done, not even the one who had raped the 5-year-old. And it was for the same reason that I felt no anger, because at the root of this was, how do you feel regret when you don't believe you've done wrong? And this is exactly the truth of these men. They don't think they've done wrong. We need to understand why that is in order to change this situation. They don't believe they've done wrong because they have been taught by us to think how they think. They have been taught by us that a woman is either of lesser value or subject to different rules. So that girl went to see Life of Pi at a mall with her boyfriend and was 23 years old. They said, number 1, she was out after dark. And from the moment they open their eyes in the world, they are taught a girl who is out at night is a bad girl. Number 2, she was with a man who wasn't her husband or her brother. Therefore, she's a prostitute. So they said to me, and meant it, not only did she deserve what she got, they had a duty to teach her a lesson. How is that for a reversal of expectation? When I'm going in expecting monsters, and not one of them is a monster. They're just robots. That's all they are. They're programmed. Okay, so I understand from them that the girl being subject to different rules in a patriarchy is what made them believe they were justified in doing this. What about Gaurav, the one who raped the 5-year-old? He can't use that argument, can he? He can't justify what he did with that. What, this girl was drunk, she was wearing a short skirt, she was... So I said to him at the end of my 3 hours with him, Gaurav, please, I need your help. Help me to understand. How do you go from having this thought to acting on it when you're looking at somebody who you yourself, I asked him to stand up and show me how tall she was. He put his hand by his knees and he went with this half smile on his face. It was the most chilling moment of my life. And I said, you've shown me how tall she was. You've told me about her. I can see her like you saw her because you've been so clear in your description. How can you do that when the girl is so tiny, so vulnerable? Help me understand. He looked at me like this was a question from someone from another planet, a complete idiot. And he said, word for word, he said this. She was a beggar girl. Her life was of no value. Okay, huge insight there. Because, you see, it's not just gender we're talking about here. And the solution and the program that we have developed in response to this is not just about gender, because it's the same motor at work. Think of the genocide in Rwanda, the Hutus and the Tutsis. What happened there? For 6 months before the Hutus were sent off to commit this genocide and annihilate the Tutsis for just being of a different ethnicity, the government radio program for 6 months blared out that the Tutsis were cockroaches and dogs. Why cockroaches and dogs? So that you can just stamp on them. When ISIS recruits behead an infidel, why? Because they are an infidel. They're of no value. They're not that particular sect of the Islamic faith. So what we come to realize is that the world over, this development emergency, this crisis that we find ourselves in, which is getting worse, not better, because of course the more used we get to violence, the more we can do it, the more we can take, the more we can give. This is all about the fact that the violence is just the symptom of the disease. It's not the disease. I expected the men I met to be rotten apples in the barrel who would be dealt with by the death sentence that was meted out to them. When I asked one of the rapists in the interview, now that there's the death penalty for rape for the first time in India, this will deter people from raping, right? He laughed. He said, now they'll just kill their victims after raping them so that we can't be identified. Do we really think we're dealing with any of these problems by reacting to the fallout and dealing reflexively? Let's build more shelters, normalizing it. More women can now get beaten. We have more places at the inn. Let's make a tougher sentencing. The girls will get killed, not just raped. There's only one thing to do in this world if we're serious about change, and that is to prevent. There is nothing else to do. And those men are not rotten apples in the barrel. The barrel is rotten. We are the barrel. And we need to take the responsibility. And when I say we, of course, I mean, well, every citizen, every parent, but particularly the policymakers. The SEP, right, has to take responsibility for putting in a prevention program. And what I have developed is not just a prevention program, it is a vaccination. It's a vaccination against violence, and it's a vaccination for values. And I will stake my life on that, and I've seen it already happening that way with my own eyes over the last 2.5 years, which is how long we've been alive with our work. Okay, Mandela. This is the last thing I'm going to say about the film, and then we leave it completely. At a certain point, I'm looking at all these 7 rapists, and I'm thinking, okay, what do you all have in common? Because therein lies, very important information for me. The first thing that strikes me is, only one of them has finished secondary school. So I leap to the conclusion that the lack of education has something to do with this brutality and this mindset. Within 2 weeks of that, I find myself sitting interviewing their whole legal team. Let me tell you that the lawyers made the rapists sound like angels. The lawyers were just as, if not more, misogynistic and extreme in their expression of hatred. And one of the lawyers actually said, if my daughter had behaved like that girl did, I would take her to my farmhouse and in front of my whole family, I would pour petrol on her and burn her alive. So what are we talking about here? It's not about poverty or them coming from, it's certainly not about lack of education. Now, when Mandela said education is the most powerful weapon we have to change the world, it's because he's talking about changing mindset. But what did he mean by education? He sure as hell did not mean the broken education system we have, which focuses on numeracy and literacy only, pretty much, which was designed in and for the Industrial Revolution, the first Industrial Revolution, more than 200 years ago, and has not been revised decently since. Here's what he was talking about. No child is born hating another human being because of their gender, their color, their ethnicity, their caste, or for any other reason. A child has to be taught to hate. And if he can be taught to hate, he can be taught to love. So for me, this was the jumping off point. It's when the light bulb went off in my head and I thought, who is teaching our children to love? I started looking at those rapists through the other side of the telescope. Who could have prevented what was an absolute inevitability that those men would grow up and do what they did? Because in their terms, they were being good boys. They were guarding the social norms. Okay, as a world, rather ridiculously, we leave it to the parents to do this job. How mad is that? How irresponsible and naive is that? The parents can only pass on their discriminations generationally, one to the next, and the cycle of violence continues. We have to break that cycle, and it's up to us who care, who will give our lives to this, and who are determined to see this happen, and it's up to policymakers. How can we say it is compulsory for our children to learn numeracy and literacy in a world in which we have spell checks, computers, calculators, but it's optional for our children to learn how to value one another? It's optional, or even worse, arbitrary. Some will learn it and some won't. How to lead healthy relationships. So as a result, because we don't mandate social and emotional learning, because this is not, as it should be, the core purpose of early years education, and that is the key, therein lies the key, early years education. And I'll show you in a moment why it has to happen before the age of 6. Okay. That is what we have to come to. So Gandhi, another very wise human being, said, if we're to reach real peace in the world, we shall have to start with the children. Our vision is a safe, free, and equal world. We share the same vision as each and every one of you in this room. I know that without even asking the question. Our mission is to bring this learning, this social and emotional learning, front and center as the core purpose of early years education, and if we can achieve it, compulsorily. Because that is the duty of care we have to our children. Here is the graph. This is not opinion. This is fact. We've been sleepwalking through these facts, but it's time to wake up and understand that at the age of 6, there are certain lines in the brain of activity and development that flat line. By the age of 6, whatever level of emotional control our children have reached is how they will be at 60 and 80 and for the rest of their lives. 90% of the brain is developed by the age of 5. By the age of 6, this dark blue line of habitual ways of responding, flat lines, If we haven't got in there before the age of 6, we cannot lay the foundation. Now, I am not saying, although if I'm very honest, and I like usually to be 100% honest, even if it sometimes offends, if I'm very honest, I have to tell you, I don't believe we can do a great deal after 6. But that is disrespectful to a lot of my colleagues, and I don't ever mean to be disrespectful, right? Because, of course, there are many people who are working with the second window of sensitivity of the brain, which there is in the teenage years. However, that's not the foundation. That means they're still having to work against the hard wiring. Why in God's name would we spend billions on therapy when we can start by just making the wiring correct in the first place? Okay. These are the 25 skills and competencies that we teach, and we believe each and every one of these is critical if we are to give our children the foundation for positive outcomes in life. And by positive outcomes, here is what we address, like a vaccination. And I'll show you in a moment how concrete and how tangible it is. What we address takes care of not just violence, rape, bullying, but suicide, which is the #1 cause of death for young men under 40, where I come from in the UK. In Alberta, Canada, also the #1 in many places in the world. It takes care of depression, which is about to be the #2 disease in the whole world. So this is about public health. It's about mental health. It's about gender violence. It's about the very foundation for a dignified life and living in respect of the dignity of others. We won't go through all of these. You've got a handout there. And of course, anything anybody wants after this, just get in touch with me and I will send you anything and everything you need. Also, the evidence, by the way, we have masses of evidence over 50 years that not only does this work, obviously not this program is actually more comprehensive than any program that's ever been before, but that even bits of this work last into adulthood. We have longitudinal studies from James Heckman, who was a Nobel Prize winner, neuroscientist. Okay, this is the structure of the program. This is how simple and prescriptive it is. 30 weeks of term time, in other words, the entire year, because we're saying it's the main subject. From 3 to 6, we're teaching it only until 6. We don't spend time above 6. And we come in at 3 because moral development in a child, in a human being, begins at 3. Okay. Also, how could we get to the 2-year-olds? We would if we could, but how can you scale this and go into the homes of every child? You can't get into the homes at that kind of scale. You can get into the education system and change the system, which is what we're all about. That's why we start at 3. 3 lessons a week is all that's needed, but you do need 3. You need to repeat it, and it needs to be regular. 30 minutes to 45 minutes each lesson, and the lessons are designed in a particular order, so we make teachers, as they receive all of the materials from us for free, all of our work is for free. We don't charge for the training. We don't charge for the materials. Any cost of putting this program into action depends only on coordinating the program, making sure that for the first year of a teacher's teaching this, they are supported, they have somebody with them who can help them and give them top-up training when needed. After that, they fly. Okay. We make the teachers, when we give them all the materials, sign a contract. The contract states that they will teach every single lesson or not do the program. That's all we ask in exchange, fidelity. Because we have put this together with experts. We know this works. But, one, we don't want certain countries to say, oh, you know what? We'll leave out the book, The Girl Who Climbed the Tallest Mountain. We're not ready for that in our country. We don't want gender equity yet. We don't want them to leave things out. And also, the whole thing is crucial if we're giving that foundation. This is theory. I'm not going to labor this. These are some examples of our books. And I've got some physical copies here as well. So you can see the range of it. I love my planet. We teach the kids from 3 to recycle, how not to waste energy and how to take care of animals and the planet. That is about diversity. It's about a little yellow ladybird in amongst red ladybirds who decides to paint her wings red because she wants to be like everyone else, and then no one recognizes her and her uniqueness is lost. So that's about, self-esteem, diversity. That is the first book, and it's entirely about self-esteem, and we redraw it for every country we are in. So we've got the Mexican version of this, and of course the whole program in Mexican Spanish. Okay, these are just examples of the books, and we have 3 levels. 3 to 4-year-olds, 4 to 5-year-olds, and 5 to 6-year-olds. So 30 weeks of 3 lesson plans. We have 90 lesson plans for every year, which means we have 270 that we've created with thought leaders in the world in this field. We have 80 books that we've created and all the resources that go with it. Again, this is theory. If anyone's interested in the academic and pedagogical theory, we have Paulo Freire and Gardner and all of the beautiful pedagogical influences. We partnered with Montessori. We partnered with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. But you know what? To me, I told you, I'm always honest. To me, this is actually claptrap. Nice to know, very nice. How's that going to help us? When the rubber hits the road and the children need it, it's every child's right to get this. So they don't grow up and rape. So they don't grow up and get depressed or commit suicide. It's their right. So if we are not to let them down, are we going to give this to teachers in the early years? Teachers who we've treated as babysitters? We've given no respect to these teachers. We pay them nothing. Now, those teachers have come into that profession also programmed, I have to say, which is a great gift to us in this instance, because women are programmed to nurture. Women are programmed to love children and take care of children. Well, in the early years, 99% of the teachers are women. Phew, what a relief. And when we go in and train them, and by the way, I go to every training, and my board always says to me, is this the best use of your time? Going on the trainings? And I go, it's the best use of my time. Because who else can tell these teachers what I've understood and seen? Who else can put the fire in their belly? And the thing that happens most often in our trainings, which are only 2 days, and again, I'll show you why they only need to be 2 days, because this is a vaccination. You don't need a year to train someone to give an injection. So I'll show you the injection in a moment, right? The thing that happens most often, the teachers cry. They cry because they say, this is what I came into this profession for. Not for the money, not to be disrespected and treated like dirt. To change children's lives and futures. So we're tapping in here to something, the zeitgeist is perfect. Because ministries of education are understanding that the key is in the early years. This is all coming together in the most perfect moment. And now is our chance to change the violence, to get rid of it. And we can. More theory. Anyone interested? I'll send it to you. Now, this starts to get more interesting because it's concrete. So, I'm going to just show you one of the exercises up here. See that color chart? Pantone, the different Pantones. It's a marvelous artist called Angelica Das. I don't know if any of you know of her. She's brilliant. She's given us this as a gift for the curriculum. Wherever we can, by the way, we've had best practice. This is Yale's mood meter from the Ruler program. That is Yale's meta moment. We've got the kindness curriculum. You'll see in a moment. The kindness curriculum is 7 weeks of our program written by neuroscientist Professor Richard Davidson from the Institute of Healthy Minds and the Dalai Lama. And it's the most beautiful 7 weeks of mindfulness you could ever imagine. Okay, let's look at that. In the first book of week 1, level 1, which is Me, Myself and I, that book you saw earlier, which is all about self-esteem. And in this book, we're celebrating all the different looks of Mexican children. And on every page we're saying, it's me, myself, it's I say, I like myself, hip hip hooray. And we're going through very, very positive, all the different images. And then we get to page 6. On page 6, the teacher is told in her lesson plan, pause on page 6 and read the page again. The page 6 says, I like my hair, my eyes, my skin. Now we ask the children, and note we ask them, we don't tell them. We ask them, do we all have hair? Yes. They have a discussion, they decide we all have hair. Now, where's Eduardo? They might just, no. Okay. Then the teacher asks, do we all have the same hair? Well, no, they decide, and especially when Eduardo's in the class, we don't have the same hair. Okay. You know I love you, Eduardo, forgive me. So, we then go on to discuss the eyes and the different shapes and the different colors, and we have a beautiful discussion, co-creating, co-discovering the knowledge, the teacher and the child. And the teacher is simply following instructions here because we've written it all out in the lesson plan, which you'll see in a moment. So do we have the same color skin, the teacher asks. Whether the children say yes or no doesn't matter because she has her resource. Her resource is these portraits. So she asks, look, the girl in the top left-hand corner, what color is she? Or what color am I if the teacher's my color? And the kids will all say, white. They will say she's Blanca. Okay, now the teacher is told, take your resource for this lesson, because all the resources are written down, the vocabulary, the resources, the outcomes. Take your resource, which is the plain white sheet of paper, and ask them, what color is that? White. That's right. So if this is white and she is white, then they will match, right? They don't match. There's something wrong. Okay. We then go on to the little girl there with the darker skin, and we say, what color is she? And they will all say negra, she's black. And then we say, if she's black, what color's her hair then? Her hair's black. Now, on this is a very faint projector. We give it in the hard copies, right? If you look at this one, you can see her hair is black. But if her hair is black, is her face black? No, because they don't match. So we have a little adventure here. We need to find out what colors are human beings. And what we do is we ask the kids to color in, leave one hand blank or color it in white, and the other one light brown, and then make another pair of hands, one black, one dark brown. What happens evidentially in front of their very eyes is, when you test this girl again, the white doesn't match, but the light brown matches. And the same with this girl here. The black doesn't match her skin, but the dark brown matches. So what have we just found out? Evidentially, as simply as it is possible to learn something with our own eyes, we're all brown. Every single one of us is brown. We're just different shades of brown. Now that is cataclysmic for a child of 3 to know for the rest of their lives. There is nothing wrong or negative or shameful about dark skin. And we learn this as we grow up. We learn about the black heart of the villain and the black mark against your name. And that is how we have children with low self-esteem, and we have racism and through language and culture. Okay, I don't know how that has happened. We've gone right back. But I remember we were here, and actually these are just a look. Girl astronaut, boy astronaut. We have occupation cards, many of them. Girl scientist, boy scientist. We show them. It's as simple as that. This is all about learning emotional recognition, literacy. And then we have the meta moment, which gives them one of the many tools we give them to deal with the emotions, because no emotion is not okay, it's fine. It's just what do we do with it and how do we express it? Kindness Garden comes from the kindness curriculum, which I told you about, the Dalai Lama and Richard Davidson. Here are the three main, because actually we've designed this curriculum around 10 of the 17 goals. So life underwater, life on land, all of those we have specifically targeted, but we don't make huge claims. Let's just call it 3. It is 10. Okay, these are some of the people who have helped us create this. Sir Ken Robinson, who I think is one of the greatest educationalists in this world. He actually architected, nobody knows, or not many people know, he architected the peace process in Northern Ireland. The government brought him in for that. I mean, amazing. Vicky Colbert, you may know, from Fundación Escuela Nueva, Colombia. We're partnered, and the BID, I think you call it, Banco Iberoamericano de Desarrollo, is funding us to do this program in Colombia. There's Richard Davidson, Dr. Mark Brackett from Yale, Barbara Isaacs, head of Montessori, Sheila Urvashi, they're from all over the world. We have someone from China. 22 experts helped us make this very specific. These here are some of our partners. If I had been a millennial or even a Gen Z, I could have added one. Brenda? Enseño por Mexico is our new partner. I am so excited by that, my God. And we're talking with Wendy Kopp, who started that movement, partnering with Teach for All in other countries. Okay, well, that's just a bit of boasting, and you know what? It's just how much we've done in 2.5 years. 13 countries, 5 continents, 2,500 teachers. This is nothing. This is a very, very small beginning. And I know it's only been 2.5 years, and that gets put into presentations because people think, oh, well, it's impressive. It will never be impressive until we give this to every single child. That is their right. And these are the countries we're in. These are the 13. We started in Mexico in 2018 with 20 preschools, a mix of public and private, in Monterrey. And now we are in 80 in Nuevo León, Santa Catarina, San Pedro, Monterrey, Guadalupe, Escobedo, etc. And now we're really starting to move. Because we're starting to form the partnerships that are going to get us there. So, okay, I guarantee that by January next year, we're going to be in at least 200 preschools in Mexico City. Guaranteed. I won't be able to show my face again if we don't. Okay. I just want to end with this quote from Aristotle. He said this 2,500 years ago. And what have we done with this wisdom? He's the one, by the way, who also said, give me a child until he is 7, and I will show you the man. He said it first. The Jesuits took it up. He was 1 year optimistic, but he was close. What he says here is what we need to serve if we want to disrupt violence and negative outcomes and attitudes in our society. Education of the head. Without education of the heart is no education at all. Thank you so much for listening. We're now going to have questions and a conversation. And I hope I wasn't too long. I probably was. I talk a lot. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leslie. It's been so inspiring for us. And the purpose of this gathering, of this convening, is to have an open conversation. For instance, we ask you to share some of preliminary questions in the confirmation survey. So one that comes to my mind is, you said it in your mission, we have to achieve a systems change, no? Global systems change. What have you seen, Leslie, in the different countries that you operate, different continents? What have you seen as different barriers of scale? Because we operate in this kind of isolated impact. So how can we transition to this collaborative impact?
I think there are two main barriers that we normally face. The one is apathy and arrogance in so-called developed countries. So I have been, and I don't mind naming names when they're no longer in power. When we need them to put the program in, I may not name their name. But the Education Minister of New Zealand, I went all the way to Wellington, 26 hours on a plane. It was a long journey. And I spent an hour and a half with her. And she said, this is a fantastic program. And I'm going to tell all of the education ministers who I go to conferences with that they must adopt this. This is wonderful. I said, heck yeah, this is stunning. I'm so happy. And so you're going to adopt it. She said, no, we don't need to adopt it. We're already doing it. So I said, okay, amazing. I didn't know New Zealand was teaching in the curriculum social. Tell me, how do you do it? Here is the only example she could give me. When I said to her, we need concrete, we want to take your brilliance and bring it in as best practice. Every term, they have a value. They name a value. And they not only do this in the school, they involve the community. So that if a child goes into a shop and the value that month or that term is politeness, if the child is polite, the shopkeeper will give it a sweet. I'm not kidding you. This is an education minister. So they think they're doing it. They're not doing it because the opposite of the obstacle, the opportunity we have, is that finally, since Jim Kim, who was head of the World Bank, and Tony Lake, who was head of UNICEF, made an amazing announcement about 5 years ago and said the whole key is early years and we have to bring in 21st century skills. I don't know why they call it that, because did we not need it in any other century? But anyway, when they say, we have to bring in 21st century skills and social emotional learning for our little ones, they started a movement which meant that governments around the world decided we have to write early years frameworks and curricula. But that's not enough. There is no point in having an academic framework that says, these are our objectives, and then telling early years teachers who we've treated as babysitters, give me by the end of this year, I want a critical thinker who is gender sensitive, emotionally, and they say, what the hell does that mean? Let alone, how do I do it? What do I use? What are the tools, okay? So that is what makes the difference. Every teacher gets, as I told you, 23 books for year one, 23 of these that have been specially written and illustrated, so they see different kinds of people from all over the world with their own eyes. And the books are to grab their hearts and create empathy, and to teach them various competencies. The teachers get a booklet of resources. Do you mind just opening that and flicking through it so you can see? And they get a booklet. Yeah. And they get a booklet of lesson plans. This is the goal. 90 lesson plans where the action is so clear, step by step. And we've got actually 270 of these in the 3 levels, but for each year, 90. So the teachers only have to administer what is there, and the children get what is their right and what they deserve. The obstacle then is apathy and arrogance. They think they're doing it because they've made a framework. And the other obstacle is somehow in government structures, a kind of lazy cynicism creeps in. They think with excitement and energy only when they're thinking about getting re-elected. So they have this next sort of 4 years. Those who are in the bureaucratic jobs have kind of lost their excitement somehow. So we have to do it with them. We shouldn't just say, of course, government buy-in is critical because we have to have scale and we can't have that. We can't change the system from outside the system. We have to change it with them, but we also have to do it with them, and we have to be prepared. Those of us who believe in business as a force for good, those of us who have foundations, who are individual philanthropists, or just poor activists like me, we have to give everything we have to ensuring that we're alongside them, making sure it's done, because if we just leave it to them, it also, it doesn't last. So that is an obstacle. But again, there is a counteracting positive force here, which is you try to take from a teacher, and we've now had, look how many thousands we've had, right? Try taking these tools away from a teacher once you've given it to her. She'll kill for it. Once the teachers start this program, they are in love. They become disciples of this work. So we have to give the tools to every classroom, and the teachers will then carry it on. Obviously, we have to continue to pre-service train and in-service train, but look, there's not much training needed. Give them the tools. If they can read, they can give this vaccination. I promise my answers won't all be so long, and there's a question here.
Sure.
Not at all. Very inspiring. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'm a very action-oriented person, so can you tell us a bit more about those 200 preschools in Mexico City?
Yes. How lovely. I love that question. Okay, so Enseña por México has got 100 and something PEMs, but definitely 100. We know we're going to do this program with those 100 PEMs. We're coming in January to train them. So they have either 1 or 2 schools each. Let's say 150 schools between them, right, Brenda? NEMI, Felix Gavito and Alejandro Gavito, you know them, they're a brilliant NGO, amazing NGO. They are doing 30. We still need some funding for that, but we're going to find it. I know we're going to find it. The funding always comes for good things. Then so I know we're going to have 200 here. I've also spoken yesterday to an amazing woman it's called Cierre. You're nodding, Marinella Servitre, who has just fallen in love with this work, and she has 50 schools that she supports, and she's going to fund Think Equal in those 50 schools. So you see, we're starting to piece it together. So when I said I guarantee at least 200, I was being safe, because I know we're going to have 200. We may have 500. We will have as many as we can fund, because the more we have, the more it spreads. Thank you for your question. That is a short answer.
Ivan.
Hello, Leslie. Thank you for being here. I'm going to present myself. I work for a long-term plan in the northern part of Mexico, in a small town called Cuatro Ciénegas. That is really nice. Everybody's invited. You too. And we have this long-term plan for the community and for the babies. We make this 25 years accompaniment for all the newborns in Cuatro Ciénegas since 2017. So we know that the early childhood is the clue.
Amazing.
But talking about the schools, you said that you're going to work in public schools in Mexico also. How do you make this alliance with the government? And
okay, so far, I've had 3 meetings with government. The first meeting was with someone who's no longer there, and it breaks my heart because he's a beautiful human being, Gilberto Guevara Niebla. He sat with me. This man has so much integrity. He sat with me, listening to what this was, looking at the materials, and he cried. Tears came falling down his cheeks. And he said to me, "You have no idea what this means to me. You have no idea what a gift you've brought here to us, because we have a national policy of educación para la paz, educación contra la violencia, and we have nothing," he said, "to put this into action with. It's just words." Why did he leave? Because he immediately introduced me, by the way, to Maria Tere Mendelez, who is the directora de curriculum, and this is federal. This is all federal and Estado de Mexico. She brought 6 of her, and I'm saying this particularly actually so that you hear Jimena, okay? Jimena is from UNICEF. UNICEF, as you will have seen, is one of our partners in 2 countries so far, and we definitely want, UNICEF is gold and huge wings for us because they work with government. And they're almost the only ones who really have the respect and the good relations with government. So, we need you on board so badly for this. And so, I want you to particularly know who we've met. 6 with Maritere. And all of them said, oh my God, these, and we sent them all the materials. They looked through them all. They said, this is fantastic. Maritere actually said to me, if you need, we don't have budget left, but if you need, I'll find something for the training of the teachers. So, you don't have government say that usually. They're usually saying, bring us the money and show us that. So we will get it done. With UNICEF, we'll get it done. All eyes on Jimena. Tell Jimena she's got to do it. Ándale, Jimena. Okay.
Mercedes.
Thank you very much. I'm from Senfova, that is a social enterprise that also has a program for social and emotional learning.
Brilliant.
And it's for the next years, no? From
6 on.
6 and up. Also
and I'm
middle
so sorry.
school.
Will you forgive me what I said earlier?
No, I agree with you. I think the best thing is in the beginning, but then you have to still
continue
working.
Of course.
So my question is, how do you give these children the next information, or are you willing to find some partner? Exactly, because
let's partner. Listen, I came to this world 3 years ago, and the thing that shocked me the most, coming from the film world, a totally different part of the world, thing that shocked me the most was everybody's working in silos. Mm-hmm. And many of them, I understand they need to survive, but many of them are charging for their materials, which means they become a business, which stops it from scaling, which was another thing. I don't believe in that. And then many of them are saying, well, this is mine. I created. No, I can't join hands with you on that because I do it this way. We all do it in different ways, and all of them are valid, and all of them are to be celebrated and wonderful. The more we do, the better. We have to partner. Absolutely, we're open to partnering with you, because wherever we are with the 3-year-olds, we can be saying to the government, and by the way, we do have MOUs with some governments. In Botswana, where we're now in 10% of all the reception classes in the country, we have an MOU with government, and we are going to 50% of the country in January, 50% of all the 4-year-olds in the country, and the following year to 100%. So once we have that, we can say to them, and by the way, here is another program that you can carry the work on with, because none of us want to stop it at 6. It's just we are 7 people living hand to mouth. I mean, to such a degree that I don't take a salary, and I never will, because if I did, that's money we can't make materials and send out to the kids, right? So we do everything we can to spread this. And, of course, we can't do more than we do, and we won't do more than 6. So please, let's partner.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you so much, Leslee, for sharing your story and your mission so passionately.
Thank you, Eduardo, for getting me here. Eduardo's the one who introduced me to Juan Carlos. Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure. My question is, teachers are important, but I think parents are more important. Have you thought about how to, make parents conscious about this?
Yes. So look, again, by now, you're getting to know me. I'm a very, very honest human being, right? Parents, by definition, are above the age of 6. Sadly, for us. So I genuinely don't believe we will change the parents. What we can do is influence their behavior, ameliorate it, make them motivated for the sake of their children, which after all children love, all parents love their children, or mostly all parents love their children, right? We are developing a parent piece right now with Innovation Edge, an organization who's funding it from South Africa, and we're creating a mobile app. Because remember, we're dealing also in places in the world where there is no internet, and connectivity is very hard, but they all pretty much have cell phones, and many have smartphones. But what we're developing is an app where we're sending every Friday to the parents one motivating fact. Did you know that for every 1 point higher of social emotional learning, your child is 87% more likely to leave college with a degree? Who proved that? Nobel Prize winner James Heckman. So we send them motivating facts, and we send them one little animation. So in that book, Amazing Daisy, the little chick who opened her eyes and decided she wants to fly because she saw birds flying across the sky. And all the other chicks had to say to her, Daisy, chickens don't fly. And her mother had to say, Daisy, we can flap our wings, but we can't fly. And throughout this beautiful book, Daisy just is determined and resilient, and she flaps her wings and falls down and keeps doing it, and finally she flies. We send the parents at the end of that week, where we've taught Amazing Daisy and we've taught gender empowerment and resilience and goal setting, a little animation of a chicken on top of a coop just going and falling. So we don't show them the end of the story, so that the children, this is a prompt for the children to teach the parents. And the children then tell the parents about the story of Daisy and how she did it. And then we give them a little 5-minute exercise, because parents are so busy nowadays. So busy believing that the purpose of life is accumulation of wealth, that they don't have time to spend with their children, right? But so we give them this 5-minute exercise to get them involved in the learning. So the best we can hope for, I believe, is to motivate the parents to say, look, you've screwed things up a bit, perhaps. We don't say this in words, but this is the inference, right? You may be rowing all the time, husband and wife, and beating each other, or not even having a husband around, or being, but don't let this happen to the children. So try, if you can, to hold on to your temper, try and be an example. I think that's the best we can do. But of course it would be ideal. In 50 years' time, all of our little Think Equal children will be parents, and then we won't have the problem. But we have the problem because we've ignored it for so long.
Hi, Leslie. Understanding the importance of this work, what happens with a kid that have the opportunity to have this training, but then since they get to 6-year-old and they don't have any more social development skills, they continue to live with their same parents that maybe they are racist, maybe they are violent. My question is this... I'm sure that this is great, but is it enough if you don't continue in the...
Yes, it is enough if you don't continue. 100%. It's been proved over and over again. And if you write to me, I will send you a wodge of studies that prove this lasts when it's done a certain way. You can't just throw any program at it and say, oh, that's social emotional learning. This is why I've gathered those experts, because this is their field. They know this subject. And I promise you, there have been many, many evaluations that prove that it lasts over years, over 25 years, over 40 years. That fact I just quoted of the 87% more likely to leave college with a degree is one of the very, very well-known documented cases. And nobody says, I don't believe that. This is a fact in this field. Guaranteed.
Hi, Leslie. I'm lucky enough to work in Enseña por México along with Brenda.
Fantastic.
And my question is, how do we take into consideration the children that are not in formal education? How to take this program to informal education, to community centers, so that the children that are not in schools can access?
Yes, so the only way we can do that is in partnership. There are... I'm right now talking to Plan Bolivia and Plan Ecuador. I'm actually a Plan ambassador before I became this. I was a Plan ambassador. So I'm hoping that we will join forces with Save the Children. Is Save the Children here? I have got a challenge for you. Save the Children so far is the only organization I've been to in Denmark, in the UK, in Australia, who don't like to partner. Now, that's okay. I respect that because that you're a huge organization, but why don't you be the first ones of Save the Children to partner with us and take this into those rural communities? Because you do that so brilliantly. And what is there to lose? There's so much to gain, and I beg you, why don't you? We're there, we'll do this. In any way you want us to partner. How about it? I mean it, seriously, I mean it. We need these wings to fly on. Otherwise, we'll only go into the schools, and we won't be able to get into the communities. 7 of us, we don't have the capacity.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jimena from UNICEF.
Jimena!
Hence, I have the huge responsibility.
Sorry.
Thank you, Leslie. I have 2 very practical questions, actually. The first one being, if it's a 90-lesson plan implemented throughout a school cycle, then I take it your 30-lesson plan regards to 1 trimester?
It doesn't necessarily fit that way.
Okay.
So because every country is different and has different holidays and different days off, we just have 30 weeks, week 1 to 30, and in every week we have week 1, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, week 2, and that's how it goes. And as long as the teachers do teach all of those lessons, listen, believe me, we go, we've put in a little safety net so that if they only teach up to 24, we're okay. But we never tell that to the teachers, okay? But the thing is, they just have to teach those lessons. And it matters what order, because some lessons refer to, like the ruler program. If you haven't yet learned how to identify your feelings on the mood meter, how will you know how to deal with them? In this lesson, you need to do it in sequence. By the way, there's a beautiful story one of the teachers in Botswana told us. In the playground, one of her 3-year-old girls, a little 3-year-old who had just joined and had just learned about the mood meter, she saw her in the playground. 2 boys of 6 or 7 older boys were fighting with each other, and Sandra Nebo was the name of the teacher. She said, I saw this girl go up to the boys. She had just learned the mood meter, and she went, stop, breathe, name your feeling, what are you feeling? And they stopped. It was unbelievable, she said. I mean, they just soak it in and do it. And then the neural pathway is formed. You see, that's the thing about, you asked, how do we know it lasts? Because it is a matter of physical science. It's a matter of physical brain architecture. If that part of your brain that deals with empathy has not lit up and created the neural pathways for empathy by the age of 6, as a human being, you can never get empathy later on, because that brain activity happens only in that period of development. But once it's there, it's for life. You can't then, it doesn't disappear. It's physically there for the rest of your life.
And I had another question, sorry.
Yes.
If we want to move or create a paradigm shift to a skills-based curriculum,
yes,
we also need to work with teachers' colleges and develop these sorts of skills also in teachers, amongst
Correct.
teachers. I was just wondering if you had thought of that or had developed some sort of methodology to be implemented in teachers' colleges.
So we haven't yet, but we've certainly thought of it. We started talking to the Aga Khan University in Kenya and to Ba Isaho University in Botswana. And what we were wanting to do was to create a center of excellence where we really teach this fully and do a whole year-long course. Because of course, if the teachers are really well trained and really understand this, it will be even better. But for us, the reason that we do the 2-day training is We need action. We need it out there. And if we spend another long time in preparation, we're getting closer and closer to 2030. I believe we can make a paradigm shift by 2030. I'm hugely optimistic. Having been on that journey, which could have, should have, might have left me as pessimistic and bleak and depressed as it is possible to be. The opposite is true. I am so full of hope. I found my purpose because I know that it's doable. I'm not the kind of human being who goes off on dreams. This is real, it's concrete, it's active, and I'm seeing with my own eyes children transformed in less than a year, which also I don't often say too loudly, because I want them to do all the 3 years, right? I remember when we were actually designing the curriculum, Dr. Mark Brackett from Yale, the founder of Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, said to me, 35 weeks. It was then 35. We cut it down after that. Why are you doing 35 weeks? I mean, do 12. I said, Mark, no way 12. We have to make a system change. You know, this is a new subject. And he said, well, you'll see. It'll happen after 12 weeks. You don't need 35. And I'm telling you, we've had feedback from teachers where after 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 months, in one case, of the most violent little boy that a head teacher had ever seen. Within 4 months, this boy was hugging children, telling them, don't be sad, you can do this. Transformed completely. A boy who was about to be expelled because he bit a little girl and drew blood. And the parents said, he's out of this school or we're taking all our kids out. So, you know, he was right. It happens so quickly because the brain is neuroplastic at that point. It's developing at the rate of knots. You put it in there, job done. Seriously. If you put it in well and repetitively and consistently, according to Dr. Mark Brackett, who's a much cleverer man than I am, for 3 months, I say for a year at least. 3 years best. More with you, even better. So, neno, right? Is that the word? What's the word? Not neno. Net. Yeah. Brenda was teaching me, yeah.
Leslee, thank you very much. I'm so grateful that I could hear you today.
Thank you.
We work in an organization for preventing addictions. And as you said before, we all have the same mission, prevent addictions throughout a social and emotional education. So I'm a pedagogue also, so I do want all your theory.
I'll send it all to you, the curriculum framework, 57 pages, everything.
So I had 2 questions. The first one was to know more about the training of the teachers.
Yes.
But if I understood correctly, it's a two-day training.
Correct.
Right? And my other question is, how do you evaluate? Evaluate.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, you're right, it's a 2-day training for the teachers. When we train master trainers who then cascade train the teachers, we train for 3 days. The training basically covers some pedagogy, but not too much. We never want to make the teachers feel that they're not clever enough to do this, right? Because some of them haven't even finished school, let alone have some qualification into university or college, right? And then the biggest, most important thing we give them is the why. Why are we doing this? Why is this critical and crucial? Because that is what opens the key to their souls and their hearts, and they then want to get this right for the children. And then it's just a practical guide. Have any of you heard of course you have, IKEA. I think IKEA is even here. Not here, but you know IKEA. You don't need to have gone to Carpenter's College for 3 years to learn how to put together an IKEA cabinet. You get an instruction and a flat pack, and you put it together. So in those 2 days, we are teaching the teachers how to use the mood meter, how to use these various tools we have. We teach them how to read stories. Because I, of course, as an ex, from my background, I know how to teach techniques of how to whisper some of the lines so that children get more engaged. and then get quite dramatic with something. You know, so we teach them techniques, we teach them how to use this, this material, but the material is there, they just follow it. The second question was evaluation. Evaluation is such a thorny issue. Now look, we've done a Yale evaluation, and actually I don't know why it wasn't in here, it should have been. In Botswana, we measured 8 measurements in a RCT, which is the gold standard, the most rigorous of tests. These 8 measurements were all in the right direction in the schools that were doing the program as compared with schools we had for comparison that weren't. Of the 8, 3 were through the roof. And Dr. Craig Bailey from Yale said he's never seen such strong measurements before. They were more than 1.5 times the variable. Scientists know that's very special. And the 3 were reduction in anger and aggression, reduction in a measure called anxious and withdrawn. So reduction in stress and reduction in just not getting involved, right? And the third one, which covers everything positive, pro-social behavior, up by more than 1.5 times the variable. So that means sharing, cooperation, empathy, kindness, all those things. So we've had proof of concept as far as I'm concerned. Now, should we carry on and do that in every country we're in? Do you know how much it costs to get that right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. What for? We know this works. Teachers the world over in 13 countries are saying, let me tell you about what this child changed and that child who came in a racist and she was turned around within a matter of weeks. We know it's working. We've got some measurements. We're doing another test just to please the academics because they love these tests. But the amount of money that gets poured into repeating the tests again and again and again, let's just give it to the children. It's so cheap to give to the children. Do you know what the cost of this is at scale? $2 per child. Do you know how much it costs in America just to keep people in prison from violent offenses? Only containment of violent offenders in prison, $500 billion a year. This program costs $2 a child for 10 years. Because once they have the materials, they will last 10 years. They only take the books out one time in a year for 1 week, and then they put it back for the next year. There are 23 million kids in America between these ages. That would cost $46 million to give it to every single child in America for 10 years, let alone $500 billion for 1 year, and that's only one part of the equation. What about the medicines and the drugs for the victims? What about the hours in hospital and the medical care for the victims, the lost hours of work that you can keep going? GDP of countries will skyrocket as a result of putting this program in. Does that answer the question? I hope.
Hi.
Hi.
Claudia Viloria with Save the Children.
Oh, you're the one who's going to be the first one to... You're already famous, we know.
Well, my question goes a little bit more into evaluating, but not evaluating kids. Because I understand that standardizing tests are not the best.
Well, for 3-year-olds, you can't directly test them. That's the problem.
Right.
You have to test them through the teachers, and then people say, oh, isn't this bias? Right. You're the teacher who's giving the program. Now you're saying that this child is much better. Well, I would challenge a teacher to remember a 37-page evaluation report from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Very hard to cheat on it, right? But even if they did, the thing is, yeah, there's always you have IDELA, right? And IDELA is a fantastic tool, but not for social emotional learning. Mm-hmm. It's too small for social emotional learning. It's too limited.
But my question goes for the teachers. What do you do to evaluate how the teachers are doing?
Yes,
because
so
I understand there is just a 2-day training. So how do you know that in a year?
Okay, so this is where Enseña por México is our dream partner from paradise. Because their PEMs go in, their teacher supporters go in and are with those teachers for 2 years. We know from feedback from our teachers, because we have focus groups 3 times a year, we keep in constant touch weekly with our teachers by phone, because we have people on the ground, of course, always doing that. We know that it takes the teachers 1 term to get comfortable with this. For the first term, they're struggling a little bit in terms of, okay, now I do this next, now I do that. After 1 term, they're just doing it like that. Even the teachers who have nothing, no experience, no nothing, right? So we know that for the first term, we need someone close to them who can top up training. We have an evaluation form, which we call a support form, where their supporter, be it a master trainer or a PEM or a coordinator from our country office, goes in, watches a lesson, and literally just points. Is the teacher shouting at the children when she gets irritated? Is the teacher saying, clever boy, pretty girl? You know, is the teacher using stereotypes? How, and we've got a whole list of what we're evaluating the teachers on, and we give them the support where we see the weakness. That's how we do it so far. Now, in this exciting new partnership with Enseña por México, and hopefully in the exciting next partnership with Save the Children Mexico, we can jointly work on how do we evaluate the teacher, how do we do that even better? Because remember, we're 2.5 years old, we're 7 people at headquarters, and we are stretched beyond what it is possible for me to describe. So we need help, yeah. Oh, it wasn't for me to say, but sorry. But you've started, so carry on. Sorry, Juan Carlos, I've usurped your authority.
Hi, my name is Laila. I'm also from Save the Children. And I have a question about the different contexts which could be applied the curricula.
Yes.
Because we also work in child-friendly spaces almost at the border of Mexico. So this curricula could be adapted?
100%. Let me tell you, the one fight I had with my director of education was when I kept saying to her, as we were doing the first draft, the first iteration of the program, I kept saying, Helen, I need this to be more prescriptive. You can't just leave it to the... She said, shut up already with your prescriptive. I've had enough of hearing this from you. You're not a teacher. You don't know. I know. We can't patronize the teachers. And I said, Helen, forget about patronizing the teachers. That's an arrogance on our part. That's worrying about how we come across. Let's worry about the teachers who are standing underneath a tree in Kenya with 60 children, and they don't even have a classroom. And they haven't even got matriculation. And I've been in KwaZulu-Natal in February training 48 teachers there for a South African pilot in one of the most poor rural districts you can imagine. And 2 of the teachers there were illiterate. They couldn't read. So we had to change assistants from other schools who could read and put them with the teachers who couldn't read so that they could read the instructions and the teachers could do, right? And what I said to her was, Helen, think and write this for, because we can deal with a patronizing point in 1 paragraph. We just say, dear teacher, we don't mean to patronize you, right? But we need this to be equally given to every child in the world, so we need an equal minimum standard. That's why we've done it as we have. But I said, Helen, imagine you're writing this for youth in a refugee camp, not teachers, but just people who can read, who can follow instructions, and the youth can take a group of 5 little 3 or 4-year-olds, and they can mentor them. And now we're creating a wonderful pipeline because the youth are learning as they teach, and that gets very exciting. So any context, 100%. Juan Carlos, you decide.
Hi, I'm Marta. I wanted to know, how are you reaching, I mean, poor children are very important, but also rich children. So it's more difficult to reach through social organizations. So how are you trying to reach this?
No, and it's a good question, and it's right on the button, because what I understood from interviewing those lawyers, everybody needs this. We cannot just say poor people, or If only poor people needed it, how in God's name can any of us explain Trump and his whole troop and family, right? How do we explain that? So by doing this as a systems change, that's why education is given to everyone. We don't just go into government schools or public schools or voluntary schools. We go into private schools. They need it just as much. What we don't do, though, the one piece of absolute, and you know, I'm even beginning to think maybe this is too much of an obstinacy of mine, but I'm sticking to it at least until I die. When someone takes over Think Equal, they can change it. I will not allow a single teacher or school to pay for this program. Not even the private schools. We've just started a pilot program in the UK, and we've got 25 schools, of which about 17 are private. And there was a point at which we still hadn't raised the money, and we were saying, look, we hope, we pray we'll be able to start. And the teachers were saying, please let us pay. We have so much money. Let us pay for the materials. And I said, no, you cannot pay for the materials. Philanthropists can pay, governments can pay, foundations can pay. You cannot pay, because the minute we introduce that, we will create a new inequality where the rich schools can afford to do it and the poor schools can't. So we have to keep that absolutely even. But apart from that, we go into any school, every school. We would go into every community center if we had the wings to fly in on. Okay.
Thanks again for being here, Leslie. It was great to meet you this morning.
You too, Eduardo.
Actually, talking about private schools, I was wondering what kind of a response you've gotten from private religious schools, which usually at least claim to be tending to this kind of formation.
So we have partnered with Pope Francis, and they are completely and utterly devoted to this. I mean, he particularly, his work with Scholas Occurrentes is interfaith. This isn't just Catholic. We did a joint conference in New York about 3-4 months ago, where we had faiths from all over. And there was the head of all the Roman Catholic schools in the UK, who has said to me, when you're ready, we do this in all of our schools. The thing is this, there is no threat to any religion in this. We are not saying this religion rather than that religion. On the contrary, we're celebrating all of them. We have one book called Zola's Bread, where we visit a Jewish home and a Catholic home and a Buddhist home and a Muslim home, and we see the celebration, all the different ways some people say thank you. Because, of course, it's not, we don't say you have to be religious, you have to. We celebrate every human being in all their different manifestations. However they look, whatever they can do or can't do, wherever they come from, whatever they believe, each and every human being is precious. This is the philosophy, an African philosophy called Ubuntu, which underlies all of our work, which is you are the other me, and I am the other you, whether we're man, woman, whatever, and we can only be human together. So I don't think there's a threat contained here. Now, if we start getting older, that's where there could be issues. If we were teaching sexual and reproductive health, for example, we'd have problems, we'd have issues. But we're with the tiny ones, where the foundation is about humanity and empathy and all those positive things, and there's no threat in there to anyone.
Leslie, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm a huge admirer of your work. I really appreciate all you have done for humanity. I have so many questions, but I will limit myself to 3 only. The first question I have is, if you ever found, for instance, the neural perspective that you are implicitly adopting says that children may present important deficits in their social emotional skills at the age of 3. So have you found in your implementations any children that won't adapt for the program itself, and how you handle those scenarios. That's the first question. Second question that I have is, considering that we have neuroplasticity, and neuroscience says that we have the two windows of opportunity, one around 7-8 years old, when we form our first theory of mind, and then we have a second window of opportunity when we form in the teenage years, around 14.
Yes.
What would you say? I understand why it's better, and it's much, much better to start at an early age, given that we have like important deficits at the age of 3. But what do you think from your curriculum, that I really think is an awesome program, what skills do you think that can go into the teenage years, and what part of what you teach can be useful? Because sometimes children don't have this opportunity when they are at an early age, and we just cannot abandon hope for all the people. So,
what do you think? Pause and not ask the third question, because I'm going to forget.
Okay, no.
But ask it at the end. You can ask it, but once I've answered the first two.
Okay, sorry.
So the first one was, have we come across children who don't adapt to this? Hand on heart, I can tell you, not once. 37,000 children. We haven't had one case of a teacher coming to us and saying, I cannot get this to work. I have this problem child and it's not working. The opposite is true. We have story after story, and I can give you a wad that thick from all the different countries. Story after story of a child who came in at 3 as a racist, a child who came in very violent, a little girl, Lupita, here in Monterrey, who had spina bifida and was just not interacting with the children at all, and they were going out to play. 1 week, 4 weeks in, Los Manos que Ayudan. The teacher Mayra came and gave her testimony in Escobedo to Mayor Clara Luz and 28 teachers. This class was totally transformed. They are all playing now. Kids came to the teacher and said, Maestra, can I be the helping hands who take Lupita to her walker? Can I be the helping hands to take her and swing her? I mean, it's magic. It's a vaccination. Vaccinations work. And this is age appropriate. So there is nothing here that a 3-year-old cannot learn or doesn't respond to, or where the neural pathways don't get formed as a result of this learning. It just happens. The second question, how did you phrase it? You said, I know that there are 2 windows, right? And of course it's better to do it in the first window. Well, then why aren't we doing it, is my question. Let's just do it. Because it's the most obvious, it makes the most sense. Let's do that and everything else. We're doing everything else anyway. You Google social emotional learning, you will find thousands of programs for the 8-year-olds onwards, the 12-year-olds onwards, the 6-year-olds onwards. There's nothing for the under 6s. There's Think Equal, there's maybe 4 or 5 others, but they're not comprehensive. In other words, they do mindfulness only, or they do emotional intelligence only. You need more than that. You can be emotionally intelligent but not gender equal, that's no good. So we need everything. Let's just do it. Let's build the foundations and then also do it again in the second window. Third question.
It's a simple question. If you keep track of like a longitudinal studies or something like that of the children that been through your program, if you keep track of those information,
good question.
And if that information is public or is available, because it can be extremely useful for all of us working on violence.
Yes. So look, here's the thing. We are in talks with 2 neuroscientists. One is Professor Jack Shonkoff at the Harvard Center for the Developing Child. He wants to co-create with Think Equal a results-based very simple methodology where we don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, but we can do a validated, reliable study. He's one of the megastars in the world in neuroscience. Mexicanos Primeros, by the way, David Calderon is also very interested in collaborating with us on this, but we need funding to do that because we need to create and design with the Harvard Center a methodology that's simple and that we can do. But then we're in talks with Professor Frank Oberkleid, who's a very, very famous children's physician. He's head of department and professor in the Royal Victoria Hospital for Children in Melbourne, Australia. He wants to work with us to do a longitudinal study, exactly what you've just mentioned, so that we will track children year after year or every 2 years. But again, the problem with evaluation is it's so expensive. Imagine, we fight for our survival, right? For us to just keep our team together, we need £400,000 a year. You know, with our country people who we hire and stuff. That's a hell of a lot of money to find. And then to have to find possibly another million or for longitudinal studies. We can only do this when the time comes, when we are established enough. We're only 2.5 years old. So we will do all this. And it's all within our grasp and reach, and we've even started the conversations. But it will only happen when the time is right and when we get funding for it. There are no hands up. Have we reached the end of the Q&A, perhaps? Are we hungry and thirsty? Thank you all so much. Thank you for being so engaged in this. You know, I come back full circle to what I said at the beginning. You guys in Mexico, and I shouldn't even use the word guys, hermanos y hermanas, you have the most amazing hearts. And su casa es mi casa. I love this country so much. Let's get this done here. Really, we can do it. Let's just join hands and do this. We owe it to the next generation. We really do. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leslie. And we share the same passion and ambition as well as you in terms of making Mexico the best country to be born and raised. And that's why we try to avoid the work in silos, just as you said, by promoting the Early Childhood Development Pact that has to do with 10 goals and just the 10th goal has to do with preventing and attending every type of violence in children, just as you said.
Which is why this yes. is, and I suddenly feel sick in my stomach, because I started with that story about having met and I forgot my introduction, which was to say the hugest thank you. Seriously, I mean, without this enabling, this can't happen. None of this work can happen, because the work isn't about us getting together here and exchanging, you know, brilliant questions and answers and thoughts. And the work is about doing it. And look what happened here. Juan Carlos and I got on a phone call. Eduardo introduced us. We got on a call. And his heart is the size of a planet. He got this work like that. And he told me the most admirable, inspiring, I was filled with respect and awe to hear about how PSM enables this. And humanity and human beings are at the very center of it. This is what enables the work to happen. Without this, we're lost. So thank you with all my heart. And you jumped in and did this within 2 weeks. I mean, amazing. Thank you. I am so ashamed I forgot to do my introduction. I was nervous too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, enjoy the